Atom Audio are a German-based speaker manufacturer, and they're primarily known for their ribbon tweeters and their studio monitors, which can be found all over the world. But can that studio quality be found at a lower price point? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about today in this video. The Atom Audio T7V speakers are priced at about $250, and that puts them in the same competitive range as the Yamaha HS7s and KRK Rocket 7s. While these speakers are competitively priced, those purchasing them probably need to stay within a certain budget, and those musicians may need them for more than just making music, such as DJing, maybe house parties, or listening to vinyl. So are these the best monitors for those people? Now the resolution on these speakers is incredible. The T7Vs have a 7-inch woofer and also that 1.9-inch ribbon tweeter. And it's not really a true ribbon tweeter, it's more of a air motion transformer, an AMT, but whatever the technical term is, Atom Audio has really pushed forward with that technology, and I think it really shows. It handles high frequency responses differently than other speakers with just your normal kind of dome tweeter. It can handle crazy bass sounds from my analog synths, and it can also handle just these large frequency transitions on the high end as well. Sometimes those bass sounds would come out pretty muddy on my other speakers, there'd be too much going on, but the T7Vs handle that bass really well, almost to the point where they do it too well. Since the frequency response is so good, it's great for mastering a track, but may not give you the best idea of what a song sounds like on your average car stereo system, crappy Bluetooth speakers, or a low bitrate copy from a streaming service like Spotify. It's a pretty well-defined bass, and there's a clear crossover between kind of the bass and the tweeters, and while that sounds great, it doesn't have the punchiest of sounds like maybe some older Rocket speakers, and that might not be ideal for DJs who really need to hear that kick drum when mixing between tracks. Now the T7Vs are rear ported, so the port is on the back, and you need about 16 inches for proper airflow for you to get the best sound quality you can. If you do have to put your speakers close to wall, let's say you have a small studio, you don't have the most room to work with, there is a -2 dB switch on the back for that low filter. In addition to the LF switch, there's also a high frequency switch if you need to lower or increase some of the higher frequencies, a volume control, an XLR balanced input, an unbalanced input, and your basic power switch. There's no indicator light on the front of these, so you can't really tell when they're on, which is a little annoying, but for this price, it's kind of to be expected. The volume controls don't have any indents, even at the 0 dB mark, so trying to get both of your speakers at the same volume can be a little difficult at first, especially when all of those controls are on the rear of the panel. Whenever I hear people talking about the T7Vs, you always hear this term of there's a lot of clarity to the sound, and I think that's mainly because the high frequencies sound so good. Because they're not domed tweeters, I think they can handle kind of quicker frequency changes, or they're just kind of faster speakers. You can really hear a lot more detail in that high end. Although the crossover between the mids and the highs isn't my favorite. It still sounds pretty great, but rather than kind of like this warm feeling you might get from other speakers, these speakers sound a little bright, and I think that's just because you can hear a lot more of that high end. Because of that, these speakers might not be the best for those that listen to vinyl. Although you'll be able to hear everything on the record, I feel like a lot of audiophiles kind of like a warmer feeling to their sound, or they just like some kind of character while listening to a record. Now these speakers have a very narrow sweet spot, and that's partly because of that ribbon tweeter. It makes these speakers great for mastering, as the sounds won't really bounce off of nearly as many surfaces like your mixing desk or the ceiling, anything that would delay a sound into your ears and kind of mess with the mastering of your track. It also helps when panning a track, because there's a great clean stereo image. You can really identify where the center of your mix is. They're very clean speakers, there's really no distortion, even at low volumes. Because of that ribbon tweeter and there's no need for a dome tweeter, there's actually a lot less power consumption by these speakers. These speakers only consume about 70 watts, so there's actually a higher power efficiency here. That means you can listen to these speakers for longer periods of time because you don't need to crank them up as loud to get the same quality of sound, which is great for those long days in the studio if you're mastering for long periods of time. Now these are higher quality speakers, and while they don't have a lot of bells and whistles, they do one job very well, and that's that clear audio quality. Now the T7Vs don't have any kind of sound dampening or padding on the bottom to prevent any vibrations, but you're not supposed to really be putting these on your desk. You're supposed to be putting these at a certain place on monitor stands at a certain distance away from you to master your track. Now since these are professional speakers, I think they're only as good as the weakest link in your entire music setup. If you don't have the largest budget, you might not have the best room treatment, you might not have the best audio card, so these speakers might not shine with kind of lower quality equipment. When I was testing these speakers, I was trying them with a bunch of different audio cards, and I was having issues with some Behringer cards that I had when I was using them with the RCA inputs. It was almost as if when it wasn't a grounded cable, I was getting a lot more hiss and static. And when I switched over to a better sound card with XLR inputs, that's when I could really hear what these speakers sounded like. That's when I could really hear what their true potential was. And that's where the clarity and quality came from. So overall, I think the T7Vs are great speakers. They have great sound quality, great sound control. They're very precise, but they don't offer the flexibility that other speakers might. And if you are on a budget, you might not have the money for any kind of speakers. So if you want them for music production, they're great, but maybe not so much for DJing and listening to records. They're definitely not great for house parties. Some people were asking me that in some other videos. So that's what I think of the T7Vs from Atom Audio. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.